Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Welcome to another edition of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller, along with Mike Hightower here in the studio with me. Mike Tolbert is back at his remote studio, and we're delighted to have you with us. And as always, of course, Mike's on Mike brought to you by the Jacksonville History Center, where our friend Dr. Alan Bliss and his fine staff, along with our generous donors, keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
By the way, here's a quick note to those of you who are viewing the show on YouTube. We had air conditioning issues this week at the studio, which has caused our cameras to overheat. So you're seeing a slide featuring, well, basically our in-studio team during the program. Of course, the audio portion of the program is completely unaffected by this situation, and we apologize for the inconvenience. I'll have a special message for video viewers at the end of the show. Two ongoing issues seem to be dominating City Hall talk these days. The biggest is the decision to give the University of Florida $100 million in cash and 22 acres of downtown land worth about $27.5 million. Now, that's in addition to whether or not we swap the La Villa office building for an acre of downtown riverfront, or some would have it, buy that land outright. All of this is so that UF will build a graduate campus here in downtown site, and some say will be a game changer for downtown, in fact, for all of Jacksonville. The second issue is a little more interesting in some respects. It's an ongoing squabble and investigation going on about a gun registry program at City Hall and the Yates Building, and frankly has many of us, including the three of us, I might say, scratching our heads. To better understand all of this is our guest today, veteran Florida Times Union reporter David Bauerlein. Since 1998, David has covered all things City Hall, plus what happens at our independent authorities like the one I used to be at, where he would call me up at all matter of night at JTA and say, "Where are the buses, Mike?" Anyhow, welcome David Bauerlein to Mike's on Mike again.
Great to be back here, and thanks for that introduction.
Mr. Tolbert, go ahead and kick it off for us.
David, thanks for coming back again. We appreciate it. And up front, I think we all want to thank you for the great way you keep Jacksonville informed on what's going on. I'm not sure right now what the hell we'd be doing if it wasn't for you, and we appreciate that very much. First of all, give us a little remedial lesson about the UF grad school. What's proposed, and how did it come about?
Yeah, so basically the University of Florida wants to build a big graduates level campus in the downtown area near the Prime Osborne Convention Center. It would offer not only classes at the graduate, but also research. There'd be a Florida Semiconductor Institute there as well. And so it's, as Mike said in his intro, it's 23 acres of land that would be developed ultimately if it's built out the way that they might build it out over a period of many years. So it would be, for University of Florida, is considered one of the top research institutions in the country. So to the extent that research then is done in Gainesville at the campus, and then they come to Jacksonville and apply it in real-world settings, that would be really something that would generate economic activity. It would probably attract students. It would attract investment. It would be good for companies here. You'd have graduate students going to school there. Perhaps they go to school in Gainesville to get their undergraduate degree, and then they move to Jacksonville to pursue their graduate degrees. So it has been described before as something what potentially Mayo Clinic did to Jacksonville when it chose to move here and has grown the way it has grown and the kind of economic impact it has had on Jacksonville. So it would be particularly if it's built out the way it's been envisioned, it would have a huge impact on the city.
Who are the main players for the city and the University of Florida, as well as this development company that's involved in the buy or land swap issue?
Yeah, on the University of Florida, I would say the main player has been Maury Hosseini, the chairman of the board, because you've had campus presidents have come and gone since this was first announced. Maury Hosseini has been a supporter throughout it and has really been the consistent through line for the University of Florida since this was first announced that they were exploring this idea back in 2023. On the city side, certainly the mayor, Donna Deegan, is has been critical to this. The idea started under Lenny Curry when he was mayor. Donna Deegan came in as mayor, continued to voice real strong support for it. So on the city side, she's been critical, I think. Various city council members have been big supporters of it. And then you have the third element you talked about, Mike, and that is the Gateway Jacks. Gateway Jacks is a local development firm. They own more than 20 blocks of downtown. So they're a really big developer downtown. They purchased a building back in November of last year. They used to be used by Interline Brands, a company it's affiliated with Walmart. No, a Home Depot now. Yeah. And so it's a 2-story building. It's nondescript, but it's on 2.5 acres. University of Florida wants to use that building to start his classes in the fall, and has basically said, as a condition of moving forward, the city's got to give them that building at no cost to UF. So the city is going through the process of acquiring that building, and the question is, how are they going to do it? I haven't heard anybody saying they're not going to get it one way or the other.
Who are the principals in Gateway Jacks? I never hear names being associated.
It's a group, I think it's DLP Capital, which is, I think it's a national group. Okay. And then the local one is JWB Real Estate Capital, which is very active in building houses in Jacksonville. And so those are the two main ones that are driving Gateway Jacks. And the CEO is Brian Mole, who has done developments in Washington, D.C. He's done developments in Tampa. There's a big waterfront development there he was active in. And then he came to Jacksonville and was sold on this idea that there's all these blocks and blocks of largely vacant or underused parts of downtown that really, from a development standpoint, a real open canvas that you can do a lot of things with.
Well, David, thank you for coming back. I got to believe that Jacksonville was not the only city that was trying to put this plan together.
Yeah, it's had some twists and turns. So basically, you have to go back to 2021. University of Florida was looking for a place to build a graduate campus, and they ended up picking West Palm Beach. And Jacksonville, as I understand it, was competing for that. It was going to be like a financial technology focus for the campus, and there's a lot of financial technology companies in Jacksonville. University of Florida decided to do it in West Palm Beach, and they moved forward with that. They got funding from the state. It went sideways with some disagreement between the university and one of the big supporters there in terms of naming rights, that kind of thing. I was told if I gave this, I would get that. So it's back and forth on that. So University of Florida was soured on that and was saying, do we really want to do this campus in West Palm Beach where we're getting this pushback, friction, and disagreements and that kind of thing? So about the time that was happening, Lenny Curry, when he was mayor, reached out to University of Florida and said, come to Jacksonville. We'll be very welcoming. Come do it here. And so then Jacksonville then emerged at that point as the site where University of Florida was going to do its graduate campus. And so this would have been in 2022, 2023. Now, I'm not sure, Mike, I understand that there are other cities that have since reached out to UF and said, what about us? But I think it really was West Palm Beach and Jacksonville were competing for the graduate campus. West Palm Beach won it. West Palm Beach then lost it. Jacksonville got it. And that's where it stands now. And I think the things that helped Jacksonville were University of Florida is looking for a place where it can take this research that it's doing at the, quote, mothership in Gainesville and apply it in real world settings. And so right here in Jacksonville, there's obviously a lot of financial technology companies that have global reach. There's just a lot of healthcare companies here,
medical industry,
which is another area where they can apply research. And so I think they saw Jacksonville as being a place where that kind of model works. The other thing, I'm sure it helped Jacksonville was also helped, I think, the fact that they have a long-standing relationship with the University of Florida through the hospital on A Street and that medical complex, which already has colleges that are teaching colleges. So the relationship was already there. The city has bumped up its support considerably for University of Florida in that hospital. So I think that medical center, that probably helps that they were all in on that. And then lastly, Lenny Curry recruited them and got them to come. And then when Mayor Deegan was elected, There was this moment, according to Maury Husseini, where he wasn't really sure whether she would be as supportive of it as Curry was. Had a meeting with her.
Because she's an FSU grad.
FSU grad. She was all in on it, and so that really caused them to move forward and say, okay, Jacksonville is the place where we're going to do this graduate campus, which would be the only campus of its kind for UF in the state. And I don't know, maybe the only campus of its kind for any of the state universities where it has like a graduate satellite campus.
And it also makes sense because UF Health is here. And they can partner with UF Health in doing research as well as other kinds of medical investigation.
So from your perspective, the mayor has been all in. This is a no-brainer for her.
Yeah, during the campaign, I wouldn't say she was necessarily all in. She was sort of gave it qualified support.
She said we'd look into it. So he kind of said campaign, didn't she?
Daniel Davis, who was her opponent, had been at the table during all this. I think the mayor's position was, I want to find out more about it. You have to remember here in Jacksonville, there was a little bit of, I wouldn't call it pushback, but the University of North Florida was, what about us? We also have graduate level programs, and we're the hometown university. And is this going to compete with us and stifle our growth? So she was supportive of it, but a little qualified support. And I think after she was elected and had the meeting, she made it clear that she really viewed this as really important to her in the city.
This is really hypothetical, but I'm just wondering, when you mentioned, of course, UNF, if Delaney had still been the president of UNF at the time these negotiations went on, particularly since he, too, is an alum of University of Florida, I wonder how that would have played or what the dynamic would have been.
But I think, to your point about the mayor, one of the things that everything she's done, she says, let me look into it. And then with Mike Weinstein and the rest of them, they get down to the numbers. And they look at, as we talked about, which we'll talk about a little bit later, she and Weinstein, it's about the ROI.
It's an expensive proposition. Who are the detractors? What are the arguments that they're making on this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I've heard any detractors on city council. That's not to say that some of them may end up voting against it at the end of the day, but there's nobody who's really on council rallying opposition to it or spearheading opposition to it. As far as, I would say detractors, but what would the opposite side of the argument would be? One would be that the city's putting a lot of money up front, $100 million in cash, paid out over a number of years, but that's money that the city is committing to this. There is this sort of vision of this built-out campus over 23 acres with buildings as far as the eye can see. Even the Prime Osborne Convention Center exhibit space torn down to make space for all these buildings. Yep. And it's quite impressive when you see those aerial renderings. Now, what they've really committed to do, at least in the next 5-10 years or so, is they'll take this one building that's an existing 2-story office building, turn it into a UF building, construct 2 new buildings, and then they have an option to build a 3rd new building and also renovate the historic train station part of the Prime Osborne Convention Center. It's one of those things, Mike, where you go, okay, if they do everything and that's all the city has to spend, that's a lot in return for $100 million. If they just do the first phase or 2 and you put out $100 million, that's a lot of money to have spent for something that's not certainly as big as the renderings has suggested this campus might be for the city.
I want to go back to David's comment about the comparison to the Mayo Clinic, and I think that's an excellent one. But I remember when the Mayo Clinic made a decision to locate to Jacksonville, and there was significant opposition from like the medical community. Mayo Clinic said that it would not really expand beyond what it came in as. It wouldn't even build a hotel. I don't think that's what happened. I would suspect, and while UF is not saying we're not going to do anything beyond our scope, and we're wondering if they're even going to do what they've laid out so far, I cannot imagine, given the historical growth of the University of Florida and other universities, but the University of Florida over the last 25 years, that that's going to slow down at all.
I can tell you, the lobbyists and the support for you for University of Florida and Tallahassee is extraordinary. So I don't think money is going to be the issue as far as it in Tallahassee. That's my sense.
Speaking of observations, you made another very interesting observation, too, as far as the way you saw this whole story.
When we think about the center of excellence here, geographically, there isn't much more they can do. The other issue, you bring graduate schools here. there isn't a lot of opportunity for graduate students at the University of Florida. We could very well become the business, medical technology, and research Disney World. If you bring that with research and all that, those are high-paying jobs.
Yeah, no, I think that's been the big appeal for this and why it is that they go, let's put $100 million in the University of Florida. It's because of the research potential that would come from having that campus here and the fact that they are almost always rated among the top research institutions anywhere in the United States or even in the world, really, when you start to scope it out. Obviously, that's one thing that people will be watching for in the future. If it's basically a campus where people can go get a graduate degree without having to commute or live in Gainesville, that's probably not what people really want from this $100 million. They want it to not just be a more convenient place to pursue a higher education and get a UF degree. They really want research and the researchers to be here in Jacksonville. And that's been fleshed out a little bit, but I think that's one thing that still hasn't really been spelled out in terms of they'll have the Florida Semiconductor Institute here, for instance. Okay, but a lot of the research, basic research, is still going to be done in Gainesville. It's going to be applied research here in Jacksonville. What does that exactly mean? Are the best and brightest minds in the world of semiconductor research going to be in Gainesville, or are they going to be in Jacksonville? So I think some of that, Mike, is still to be determined, and at least as someone who's followed it, how much of that research is actually going to shift to Jacksonville as a result of this campus.
I used to live in Boston, and I worked in the Back Bay of Boston. There are a lot of colleges that are down there, including MIT. They've got so much student housing that's available in the downtown Boston area to support the educational institutions, and add to that the retail that they have, restaurants and nightclubs, things of that sort. We don't have that kind of infrastructure here. And those students who might attend the graduate school are going to want to know, where am I going to live? Where can I party? And how can I get around?
So there are plans in the ultimate build out to have student housing on the campus itself. And there's no commitment to do that on any kind of time frame, but that would be the idea. Once you get enough students there, then it makes sense to have student housing for the graduate students.
But it's going to have to be market-priced housing. These young students cannot, even though they're grad students, they can't afford $1,500, $2,000 a month for rent.
Yeah, exactly. So that would have to factor into in terms of how that would be, to what extent it would be subsidized by the university.
Right.
Now, one thing that the University of Florida, when they picked this area around the Prime Osborne, they wanted to be in downtown. That was part of it. But they also looked at what's happening in the Brooklyn neighborhood, which is immediately next to it. There's a lot of residential development that's happened there. There's a fresh market. There's a Whole Foods supermarket that's about to go in. So that was very attractive to them from that standpoint. The Emerald Trail network of bike and walking paths goes right by where the campus is going to be. They like that. It's near the Jacksonville Transportation Authority's transit center. Now, obviously, Jacksonville is nowhere near Boston in terms of its...
No, it's about 1,500 miles away.
Transit capabilities there, but that also is connected to that area of downtown.
I would like to suggest that John Rood will come in and solve the student housing problem or the availability of housing in downtown for that school. I don't think that's going to be a big issue.
No.
I really don't. Back in the 80s, Jake was big on public-private partnerships. And I think one of the things that keeps getting overlooked, and not because of your reporting, David, I just think there's so many other things in the mix, is that this is a public-private partnership. And the fact that the state of Florida is also putting up $150 million to make this happen. And then there's another $50 million that's coming from private donors. And I would guess that eventually will grow or could grow beyond $50 million, especially if Mr. Maury Horsini is involved. Where are these students going to come from, David? I'd like to know more about them. Where else can they go to get the kind of education that they're going to get here? What's the competition going to be?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, Mike. I think they're very good to be very heavy into artificial intelligence and the application of that. So I think if you are interested in doing graduate level programs in the fields of healthcare and financial technology that uses artificial intelligence, AI, then I think Jacksonville would be as good a place to go as any because University of Florida, AI is just everywhere in their curriculum. They have this thing called Hypergator, which is this incredibly super-sized, super-fast computer there. I'm told that if, let's say you want to know what films somebody was in, they can download like thousands of films and tell you in 5 seconds whether so-and-so was in that film or not.
That's remarkable.
It's just incredible in terms of the speed so I would say some of the people are going to go to these colleges, graduate colleges, or Jacksonville residents, and that's where it's going to start. I think they're going to have an architecture program that's already here, is where they'll start in the fall. They're going to have an MBA program then in January, spring of 2026. That's probably, you may have some graduates from University of Florida who then come to Jacksonville to continue it, but this could be people who otherwise would be doing a commute to get their degrees from Gainesville. As you progress, though, and you actually have the research build up, then I would think those are students who are among the best and the brightest anywhere, because they're going to be going to University of Florida Research Institution, and that would be as good as you find anywhere in the country.
Much of the controversy is about this proposed swap of 1 acre downtown riverfront for the vacant land Interline building owned by JWB Real Estate. Councilman Ron Salem, who once was an investor with JWB, has opposed the swap and now wants the city instead to purchase the building. From your perspective, does Salem have any council support for this purchase, and what do you think will happen?
No, he has support on council. I think it's going to be a very close vote. I couldn't predict at this point whether they will support the land swap or buy it outright. I think it's going to be a close one. The mayor's argument for doing the land swap, which in a way is complicated, but basically Gateway Jacks owns this office building that the city wants to acquire to give to the University of Florida campus. And so they want to swap with Gateway Jacks 1 acre in Riverfront Plaza, which is where the Jacksonville Landing used to be, and a parking lot on the other side of the Main Street Bridge. And the swap then would be conditioned on Gateway Jacks then building a 17-story tower on that 1 acre parcel in Riverfront Plaza.
Which is where the landing was.
So that's the mayor's argument. It's two birds with one stone. We get the building we need for UF at no cost, and we have a developer who comes in and builds on Riverfront Plaza this tower that was part of the original plan all along for Riverfront Plaza. And they can do it. And yes, there's going to be some incentives requests, but that's a big boost for downtown to have that tower. The flip side of it is that there's critics who say it's not an economically viable project to build that tower there. Do we really want a 17-story tower in the park? Riverfront Parks now is saying do a 2 or 3-story building there. You'll get the retail and the restaurants, but you don't have a 17-story tower over the whole park, and it costs less for the city taxpayers. And the other part of the argument is that rather than do a land swap, the city should decide, okay, what do we want on that parcel? Do we still want a 17-story tower? If we do, then just do a request for proposals and let everybody put in their best proposal, and let's see who's got the best deal for the city. And in order to do that, though, you have to pay cash to get this Interline Brands building for the University of Florida, which would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million.
Before we run out of time, I want to get to that second issue that I mentioned in the opening, David, and that has to do with this gun registration issue. And basically what happened is it was discovered that those people who are legally carrying arms into the City Hall and the Yates Building have to register their names, the kind of gun they have, their grandmother's name, all the kids' names. It's just a whole registry so that they know who came in there, that they were packing, and what they were packing. No one is taking responsibility for this. Apparently, this rule came out hours, if not a couple of days before Donna Deegan became mayor, but Lenny Curry is already saying, no, I had nothing to do with this. Where did this come from? And who should be held responsible for this? Some people are saying that this is totally unconstitutional to be able to do this. Others are saying that it's for public safety. What have you found out in your reporting and your investigation on this?
Yeah, basically, there's been a law in the books since 2004 that a local government cannot keep a list of gun owners and their weapons. So it's a longstanding law.
Why isn't that the end of it then?
And so the city did have a logbook where starting in late July of 2023.
Actually, late June, I think, wasn't it? Because she took over in July 1?
You can go through the chronology of it. The logbooks actually were started in late July of 2023.
Okay.
And they were done by a directive from the public facilities manager at city government to the security firm saying that here's what you need to do. You need to have a logbook, and it has to have these things in the logbook: the name of the person, government-issued identification like a driver's license, the type of weapon. And you have to keep those. So it was done at the direction of a mid-level administrator in city government. We have the documents that show that. So the question is, did that person just do this on his own? Was that person directed by people higher up to put this logbooks, to require these logbooks? Did that person inform others higher up in the administration, here's what we're doing, so they knew about it? And if so, did they object or not? So that's the real question here, is that on the face of it, you have a gun logbook that does what state law says a local government can't do.
So when are we going to find out the answers to those questions you've just raised? Who was behind it? Who did they report to? Who approved it? When are we going to find that out? Is it going to take a court case to bring somebody up and under oath have to testify to those questions?
The state attorney, Melissa Nelson, is investigating this, and she has asked for lots of text messages, emails, correspondence to find out who besides this mid-level bureaucrat was involved in this decision. And Lenny Curry has said his administration did not tell this person to do it. Mayor Donna Deegan has said she didn't know about this until it was brought to light just a few weeks ago. So that's really what it boils down to. During this time period, there was a lot of discussion at City Hall. How are we going to handle the fact that starting July 1st of 2023, you can carry a concealed weapon into City Hall, even if you don't have a concealed carry license? So what are we going to do about this? And at one point, the mayor was suggesting to the sheriff, maybe we can turn City Hall into a police substation. And that would, if you put a police substation there, then you can't bring guns in. There also was a lot of discussion about, okay, how are we going to handle whether people carry a gun into City Hall? They're legally allowed to do that. You're not allowed to carry a gun into a city council meeting. Right. So there's a lot of discussion. How do we handle that part of it? And those are all involved discussions pretty high up at the highest levels of city leadership. The question now is, were these discussions about the gun registry logbook also at high levels of city government, or was it just one person whose job is to have a public safety plan for city government buildings, whether that person on his own decided to do this?
Okay.
David, back in the 70s, when I was an aide to Mayor Tanzler, Warren folks came up the elevator looking for me with a shotgun. That's right. And I don't think he had a permitted carry, but he did. The second comment is that late last week, I was talking to a reporter and who asked me, not with the Times Union, but who asked me what kind of political ramifications did I think this was going to have for Mayor Deegan. My answer was none. First of all, her supporters probably think it's a good idea to have a gun registry. And if she had anything to do with it, they probably applauding her. And the other side of that is the folks who oppose having a gun registry, I'm not going to go for Donald Deegan anyhow. So I don't think it's going to have any political impact. It's just much ado about nothing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the only political impact it might have, Mike, is related to the investigation. It's a third-degree felony to have a gun registry or list or record by a local government. The mayor said she didn't know anything about this, so that's where we're taking her at her word there. She's not in any risk of criminal liability. But it depends on how high up this decision-making went. Now, if she was involved in it, then she has some criminal liability and the governor can remove her from office. So those factors are played. But let me just stress, nobody has shown anything other than at this point it was a mid-level bureaucrat's decision or administrator's decision, and it doesn't go any further than that. But that's part of what the investigation will look at.
And we should also point out, too, that as soon as the mayor did find out about it, she stopped it immediately.
Exactly.
So it's not being done now, folks, if you're trying to take a gun.
My sense is, given when you read the news about people with guns in public places around elected officials, my sense is I think there are people going to be asking the question a little bit along the lines of what Mike Tolbert said is, are you mean that people can just walk into a building now and don't have to tell anybody? To me, we're waiting for a wreck to happen. And then all of a sudden there'll be the conversation, should we have had that? To me, having people can just walk into a public room, into a public building, I'm not sure when this was put this law was put on the books or whatever it was, that we were thinking about how times have changed, unfortunately, for the worse. And my way of thinking is, I think there are a few more deranged Warren folks out there than the one that was after Mike Tolbert. And I just think it's a matter of time before we have a situation that we're going to have a different discussion about.
We don't need a Harvey Milk episode in Jacksonville.
No, that would be awful. And there's been a couple of cases where people have shot at City Hall in the recent couple of years. And remember, this is a state legislature who changed the law in 2023 and said you can carry a gun with you into public buildings with some exceptions, even if you don't have a license.
All right. And that's going to wrap things up. David, thank you so very much once again for coming back.
Yeah, always happy to come back.
Oh,
happy to be invited. It's great.
That's the calendar, you guys. Appreciate it very much.
Get that in writing that he was happy to come
We
back.
already have it on video. It's even better that way. Speaking of being on video, I have a personal request. If you guys don't mind me taking a moment here for a personal reflection. On our Facebook page, that's the Mike's on Mike Facebook page, I've uploaded a question that I'd like those of you who visit our page to please answer. We're trying to figure out how many of you listen to this program and how many of you watch this program. I've done some informal polling with a number of people I know who follow the show, and about 80% of the people who follow this program do it by audio and not video. So I thought we should ask that question of our audience and see what they come back with. So if you don't mind, go to the Facebook page. It's Mike's on Mike, and just answer that question for us so we get a better gauge on who's watching us and how are they doing so. And with that, thank you all very much for being with us again.
Is there a toaster if they get the right answer?
I'll give them yours. We'll see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, support our sponsors at the Jacksonville History Center, and we'll see you again later.
Thank y'all. Take care.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.